to A Mexican Crossing Lines. Welcome, welcome, welcome. With your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And today, on Cinco de Mayo, happy Cinco de Mayo to everyone out there, we're going to focus on Mexico in a show I'm calling Mexico Matters. And it does because it matters what happens to our neighbors to the south. It matters what's been going on in Mexico. It matters when we're talking about what's happening in our country. And I think that it's a story that will continue to develop. We're going to find out more and more about what's really going on in Mexico. So today on Cinco de Mayo, I'm going to be focusing on that. I am going to take you through the numbers here in the U.S., of course, and in our local community as well, here in Minnesota and North Dakota. We'll talk about some of the things we're facing right now, such as people getting shot and killed at grocery stores for telling people to wear masks.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
It's happening here in the U.S. And also fake COVID tests circulating in different states, things that people need to be aware of so you don't get scammed by one of these fake COVID tests. And of course, that's on top of all of the personal protective equipment that has come out of China, as well as the tests that have come out of China that are in many cases defective and even dangerous. So we'll talk about all of these things on today's show. But first, I want to thank everyone for being here, for following us on social media, for sending me your comments, your questions. And of course, I want to thank every single person that supports independent media and local community radio.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're living in some strange times, that's for sure. You can get hold of us many ways. One way is calling our message line, 701-566-0917. Again, that's 701-566-0917. You can also email Cindy at kpppfm.com or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. You can also jump over on Facebook at 88.1 Fargo Moorhead Radio, Mexi-Can, and the People's Press Project on YouTube. The channel's name is Duke1517. And those of you watching on Facebook, I don't know why these subtitles just all of a sudden start running. You know, I guess it's a local setting. It's not something we're doing.
Oh, that's right.
But it just happens on your own machine, your own device. Yesterday I didn't have it. Today I have it. So it's like, I don't know.
I don't know how you adjust your own settings to fix it, but we are not doing it.
We're not doing it. We're not setting up subtitles. You know, usually that's a end user deal, and you're welcome to read along if you want to do it that way. But there's a way to shut it off. Just Google that. You can go to kpppfm.com and look at our past programming and read a little bit about the organization and the radio work we've been doing for the past 4 or 5, 6 years. And please support us. We're a nonprofit, non-commercial radio station in Fargo, Moorhead, North Dakota, Minnesota. Go to kpppfm.com/donate. Make a tax-deductible donation. Support our work so we can continue to put these shows on and continue to move forward. Thank you.
And I also would like your input on some personal level, because we've been quarantining for a while. And I'm pretty resourceful. Long before the quarantine went into place, I have long hair, and I cut my own hair, and I've been doing it for years now, really. And I like doing it because I do it exactly how I want it, and I always do my hair in different hairdos. So I like having that control. But Duke, on the other hand, he's got a hairstylist he's been going to for many, many years, which he hasn't been able to visit for a while.
I usually don't. Usually I get a cut and I don't go back for 3 to 6 months.
I know, but this is been way beyond that now.
January, February, March. It's
It's getting to that point.
Well, I'm just gonna let it grow. I'm not gonna cut it.
I would love to hear from the audience. I mean, I think you look really good. I would even go on a limb and say you look hella sexy in long hair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I met you, your hair was long.
Yeah.
But I want to know, what do you guys think? Should I learn to cut Duke's hair? Should I learn and try to cut his hair, or should we let it go long? I want to hear from all of you out there who look at it. Put yourself back up so people can assess it. Give him a side view, Duke. Give him a side view so you can see how long it's getting. There we go. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do you think? Tell me what you think. Send me your suggestions. Do we try to cut his hair, or do we just let it go? I want to know what you think. Let's take a look at our numbers for the world. The numbers have climbed to 3,646,206 cases worldwide confirmed. Spain is over 200,000. Italy is over 200,000. The United Kingdom is at 196,000. France is at 169,000. Germany at 166,000. Of course, these numbers just continue to go up. Mexico is over 24,900 cases right now. And that's according to what they're telling us. What we don't know is how many they have in real numbers and real deaths. Globally, we've got 255,486 deaths. Let's take a look at the U.S. In the United States, we are currently at 1,231,006 cases, 71,783 deaths, 198,935 recovered. The states, even though places like New York and New Jersey have lowered the number of daily cases, hospitalizations, and deaths, they are still having hundreds of deaths per day in New York and New Jersey, in Massachusetts, in Illinois, in Pennsylvania. And our numbers locally, they continue to go up as well.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. In Minnesota, the numbers keep on going up. You know, it spiked down a little bit, but it's been just going up and up and up. There's 7,234 confirmed cases, and there are 428 deaths. Now, it's 571 new people were infected in the past day in Minnesota, and 9 more people died in Minnesota. Now, in North Dakota, there weren't any deaths in the past day, which is very, very fortunate, but they had 34 more confirmed cases at 1,225, and a total of 25 deaths. Cass County has 605 of those cases. Remember, Cass County is the largest metropolitan area in North Dakota, and they have over half the cases in North Dakota are from that county. And the people,
our county.
Yeah, in our county. You know, it's where we live. It's kind of scary because people are, you know, Cinco de Mayo. They're out to bars tonight. You know, I don't even know what it looks like down there. You know, I looked at some of the places and they had, you know, bar stools set up, you know, far apart, but then people stand around. You can be in booths right up to back in booths, you know, and so it's like they're not doing distancing between booths.
And in restaurants, you can sit together.
Yeah.
Up to 10 people at a table.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's a requirement if they have to be everyone from the same house. You suppose they're checking, the servers are like, show me your ID. Are you coming from the same house?
The tape measures are out there, too.
I doubt it. I highly doubt that they're going to those kinds of lengths. Well, let's go to the story of the mask shooting. There was a case of a person. The next one is mask shooting. Let me see if I can find it here on my end. There was a person who went to the grocery store, and this was reported in CNN. 3 family members are charged in a shooting death of a security guard who told a customer to put on a face mask. 3 family members were charged in the killing of a security guard who told customers at a Michigan Family Dollar store to wear a state-mandated face mask. This was according to Officials on Monday. Calvin Mullerly, Calvin Munnerlin, 43, died at a Flint hospital after he was shot in the head Friday, said Michigan State Police Lieutenant David Kaiser. Ramanye Trayvon Bishop, age 23, and Larry Edward Teague, age 44, as well as Charmel Lachey Teague, age 45, were all charged with first-degree premeditated murder, along with other charges in the Genesee County Prosecutor's Office. This was according to a statement. Charmel and Larry Teague are married, and Bishop is Charmel's son, according to the prosecutor's office. From all indications, Mr. Munnerlin, the decedent, was simply doing his job in upholding the governor's executive order related to the COVID-19 pandemic for the safety of store employees and its customers. Genesee County Prosecutor David Layton said in a statement, Munnerlin got into a verbal altercation with Charmel Teague after telling Teague's daughter she needed to be wearing a mask. And so what actually happened was that Charmel Teague, the daughter, was there with her mother. She was asked to leave the store because she wasn't wearing a mask. Mom began yelling at the guard, who then asked her to leave the store as well, which she did. And the guard also instructed the cashier not to serve her, not to check her out, not to give her service in the store. So both of them left and went and got dad and son, told them they felt disrespected. Dad and son go back to the store with gun, find the security guard, get into the verbal altercation with him, and then they shot him in the head.
Wow.
In addition to the murder charges, Bishop also faces charges of a felony firearm and carrying of a concealed weapon. I really didn't think I would be hearing, and I did talk about this just yesterday on my show, of the people's entitlement to their right to not wear a mask, to infect other people, and even to kill others who they feel are violating their constitutional rights. Well, folks, it's happened. It's already happened. And it's very disturbing, but there it is. This is what things are coming to. In other news, fake COVID tests are circulating. According to the Border Patrol, fake, unapproved, and prohibited COVID test kits are being found in mail facilities in Chicago, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, and Louisville. These kits are dangerous to American public and can cause major health problems. So you have to beware. And folks, remember I told you, if there is a COVID testing site, it needs to be approved by your local authorities, by your state authorities. If your state and local authorities do not know about it, if it's being sold to you online, if it's you need to, buyer beware, because they could be selling you something fake and or even dangerous. Now, I showed you a video of a nurse. She was talking about her friend working in a hospital in New York. And of course, she did say that this is not the case for all the hospitals in New York, but at this particular hospital, they were murdering people. That's the words she used.
Yep.
And she talked about the fact that part of what she considered this quote-unquote murder was not giving people appropriate testing, not giving people, treatment, not giving people early treatment and proper treatment. Basically, what she said is that people were presenting with something that appeared to be altitude sickness, and even referred to a New York doctor who, by the name of Seidel, who first rang the bell. This is the man she was referring to. This is Dr. Seidel in New York talking about COVID.
This is Dr. Cameron Kyle Seidel, ER and critical care doctor from New York City. 9 days ago, I opened an intensive care unit to care for the sickest COVID-positive patients in this city. In these 9 days, I have seen things I have never seen before. In treating these patients, I have witnessed medical phenomenon that just don't make sense in the context of treating a disease that is supposed to be a viral pneumonia. 9 days ago, I presumed I was opening an intensive care unit to treat patients with a virus causing a pneumonia that was ravaging lungs across the world, starting out as something mild, a cough, a sore throat, and progressively increasing in severity until ultimately ending in something called acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS. This is the paradigm that every hospital in the country is working under. This is the disease, ARDS, that every hospital is preparing to treat. And this is the disease, ARDS, for which in the next 2 to 6 weeks, 100,000 Americans might be put on a ventilator. And yet, everything I have seen in the last 9 days, all the things that just don't make sense, the patients I'm seeing in front of me, the lungs I'm trying to improve, have led me to believe that COVID-19 is not this disease, and that we are operating under a medical paradigm that is untrue. In short, I believe we are treating the wrong disease, and I fear that this misguided treatment will lead to a tremendous amount of harm to a great number of people in a very short time. As New York City appears to be about 10 days ahead of the country, I feel compelled to get this information out. COVID-19 lung disease, as far as I can see, is not a pneumonia and should not be treated as one. Rather, it appears as some kind of viral-induced disease, most resembling high-altitude sickness. It is as if tens of thousands of my fellow New Yorkers are on a plane at 30,000 feet and the cabin pressure is slowly being let out. These patients are slowly being starved of oxygen. I have seen patients dependent on oxygen take off their oxygen and quickly progress through a state of anxiety and emotional distress and eventually get blue in the face. And while they look like patients absolutely on the brink of death, they do not look like patients dying of pneumonia. I have never been a mountain climber, and I do not know the conditions at base camp below the highest peaks in the world. But I suspect that the patients I'm seeing in front of me look most like as if a person was dropped off on the top of Mount Everest without time to acclimate. I don't know the final answer of this disease, but I'm quite sure that a ventilator is not it. That is not to say that we don't need ventilators. We absolutely need them. They are the only way at this time that we're able to give a little more oxygen to patients who need it. But when we treat people with ARDS, we typically use ventilators to treat what's called respiratory failure. That is, we use the ventilator to do the work that the patient's muscles can no longer do because they're too tired to do it. These patients' muscles work fine. I fear that if we are using a false paradigm to treat a new disease, that the method that we program the ventilator, one based on a notion of respiratory failure as opposed to oxygen failure, that this method, and there are a great many number of methods we can use with the ventilator, but this method being widely adopted at this very moment in every hospital in the country, which aims to increase pressure on the lungs in order to open them up, is actually doing more harm than good. And that the pressure we are providing to lungs, we may be providing to lungs that cannot stand it, that cannot take it, and that the ARDS that we are seeing, that the whole world is seeing, may be nothing more than lung injury caused by the ventilator. Now, I don't know the final answer to this disease. I do sense that we will have to use ventilators. We will have to use a great many number of ventilators, and we need a great many number of ventilators, but I sense that we can use them in a much safer way. And a much safer method. That safer method challenges long-held dogmatic beliefs within the medical community and among lung specialists, which will not be easy to overcome. But I really believe that they must be overcome. There are hundreds of thousands of lungs in this country at risk, and the time to overcome them is now. I'm confident that if those of us that work bedside with these patients, those of us who are witnessing the things that we have never seen before, despite the many years we have worked and the thousands of patients and diseases we have seen, if we can effectively communicate this to all those that are so important but who are not bedside, the researchers, the administrators, those who procure our resources and make our protocols, the politicians, our own government, if we are able to convince them that this is a disease that is different than anything we have ever seen, I am confident that an answer can be found, that effective treatment can be discovered, and that a plan to disseminate that treatment can be rapidly deployed, and that tens of thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of lives and lungs will be protected. The time for this is now. We are staring into a future in which a great many of our fellow Americans are going to suffer, not to mention people all around the world. For those who will not suffer directly from this disease, from the terrible human cost of this disease, for those who will not lose a family member or a friend, and there will be a great many number of people who will lose those close to them. But for those who don't, they are still going to suffer from the great economic cost of COVID-19. We are all involved in this future. So I urge you, for those of us, if you are out there, for those who work bedside, I urge you to speak up. We can change this. I thank you all for.
So, for those of you who don't recall the video that I showed you of this nurse that was talking about Dr. Carl Seidel, she mentioned the fact that what they were seeing was pulmonary barotrauma. And barotrauma is damage to the lungs from rapid or excessive pressure changes, as may occur with a patient that is on a ventilator or that is subject to high airway pressure. Pulmonary barotrauma can also occur in scuba and other forms of diving.
I see.
And so one of the things that we know is that we continue to learn about how this disease affects different people, and it seems to have different effects on different people depending on their comorbidities, their previous medical conditions. Let me go to some of the comments. Desiree Lozano asks, Cindy, who do they know people are recovering? How do they know people are recovering? How? Okay, yes, how? Well, on yesterday's show, I told you that there's a variety of ways, but the CDC has basically set guidelines that if you have no symptoms and no recurring fever after 14 days with no fever spiking, then you are considered recovered and you may return. People are being let out of hospitals and sent home. Does that mean they're fully recovered, i.e., no longer shedding virus? No, because as we have learned, the virus continues to linger in the lower lobes of the lungs and in the intestines, shedding virus continuously in fecal matter for up to 33 days. So the definition of how and when you're recovered has been changing as we learn more about this virus and how we can detect it, including testing wastewater. Valissa Miller says, our government is lying to us to break the USA. Valissa, I think that we as Americans, we hold our media, our government to a very high standard, and we want to know why we're not able to get more information and more rapidly, and why aren't we doing the level of testing that we need to be doing, or all of these things people have complained about. In reality, information and knowledge, specifically about this novel coronavirus, are limited. And as we learn new things, we're adjusting the information so that the people understand, which is why all the way up to the president is constantly having to revise what they say and what they know, because we are learning more and more about this every day. Brenda says New York is slowly opening, but still cases are coming in. Kat McHugh says we're in Las Vegas, where people all over the world come. How is it not going to hurt the locals? Definitely. And as long as states continue to reopen and let people come back in and start doing business as usual, more and more local people will be affected. Let's see if there are any other comments. From what I know, this doctor has it right. I have asked that if I get it, not be put on a ventilator until everything else is tried. That was a very good suggestion by that nurse. Lily V says, my daughter died from punctures of her lungs. She struggled for air. The suffering is horrible. I was with her till the end. I'm so sorry, Lily. So many people are trying to figure out how to best go about dealing with this. And in some places like Brazil, it's not going very good. I want to share a video from Twitter that shows an aerial view of what's going on and the mass graves that are currently being dug to accommodate bodies.
Upon thousands of graves are being dug at a cemetery in Sao Paulo as Brazil's president dismisses the coronavirus as a light flu. There are almost 80,000 virus cases in Brazil and more than 6,000 people have died.
Now it is Latin America's turn to face the pain of the COVID-19 storm that spread west across the globe. In Brazil, the health service is ill-prepared. In truth, it's already overwhelmed. They know this. They can't fight this virus. They're digging thousands upon thousands of graves in the city of Sao Paulo. More than 13,000 are planned. In full hazmat gear, the grave diggers and burial teams struggle over the freshly dug earth. Grieving family members follow behind. This is the funeral of Jose de Oliveira. He was 52 years old. He died after a few hours in hospital. Every family is allowed 5 minutes at the graveside. Every 5 minutes, there is another burial. The graves are separate, but the dead are covered over en masse. To all intents and purposes, this is a mass grave. Across the world, the phenomenon of this virus is always the same. Everyone dies alone.
The last time I saw him was when he entered the ICU, and then we never saw him again. That was the last time I saw him.
They've been digging graves here non-stop for the past 2 weeks. They're doing about 800 a day. The workers thought they'd have been done by now, but they've been told to keep going.
I'm digging new graves every day, but we're all still hoping we don't need to use all of them. This is what I pray for God for every day.
Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro is still dismissing this pandemic as a light flu. He's wrong, of course, but it's irrelevant what he thinks anyway. They're dying here in huge numbers, and it's nowhere near the peak. More countries in Latin America are going the same way.
More countries in Latin America are going the same way.
Yeah.
In New York, I wanted to show you because, you know, we heard about how New York was the epicenter of this virus and how so many people were dying, and the refrigerated vehicles. And I just want folks to know the nightmare is still not over for New York. Just because they flatten their curve and their numbers keep going down every day, there's still hundreds of people dying and suffering, which includes the doctors that are treating folks. Here is the screenshot of this particular doctor. This is just from Monday. I wanted to show folks that in New York. It's not from a week ago or a month ago. Oh, yeah. So this New York doctor tells about his day treating coronavirus.
Things are just totally crazy right now. Everyone is COVID positive in these hallways. All you hear is oxygen.
This New York doctor gives a glimpse into his shift
A lot of my mentors told me that first year out of residency would be tough and super challenging. Never in my wildest dreams could I imagine practice clinically out of residency as my first year as an attending, having to deal with this mess. I'm about ready to walk into the ED, and we'll see what the situation's like. I heard that our volume is just exploding, and we have so many people in the hallways that are all COVID positive. I'm seeing young patients, old patients, people of all age ranges who are just incredibly sick. How are things going today?
It's going busy. We've seen a lot more patients, and they're critically ill, and we're doing our best to keep track and keep on top of them and make sure that we can provide oxygen for them. But this has been the story for the past week or so, and it's just getting progressively worse.
So I'm now walking into the critical care room. In the critical care room is where we have our sickest patients. Just wanted to show you some of our equipment. So this is a ventilator machine. We keep it protected with plastic covering just to make sure it does not get contaminated. We have our suction, we have our oxygen, we've got our monitor. I've never seen us have an empty spot in the critical care bay, but we try to make sure that we at least have space for one more emergency that comes through our door. This is the brand new tent that we've set up. It's meant for surge, which means patients for which there is no space in the emergency department. All right, so this is one of the tents that we are about to get up and running. As you can see, there's a registration desk, and as we kind of walk through this tent, we've got a huge range of supplies. Each room is kind of cornered off with telehealth capability, where a provider will be on the other end remotely providing guidance. As we're getting this tent prepared, we're going to walk out. You can see we've got a ton of oxygen tanks here ready to go, and we're about to walk into the second tent that now has patients. And we're just walking through. So as you can tell, we've got patients in each bed lined up. We really have some fearless staff. Everything is closed and confined. There's a lot of really dark, difficult cases being handled right now in the department. But one bright spot in the day is the fact that the hospital announced that anytime a COVID-positive patient gets discharged, they would be playing a piece from the Beatles song, "Here Comes the Sun," on the loudspeaker. And actually at one point today, I did hear it. So I just finished my shift. Here comes the fun part, which is decontaminating my entire body, including the things I'm wearing and washing my face. But one thing that I did take away from this shift and noticed in particular is that a lot of my patients who are super sick are actually male. I did not have a lot of female admitted patients, which kind of coincides with some of the recent news reports in the New York City area that seem to suggest that male patients tend to be more frequent on the sicker end as opposed to their female counterparts. So I'm going to pack up, get everything together, and think on my drive home, like I do every night, of what more I could be doing to help fight this crisis and what cures are possibly out there.
So you can see that this is still very difficult for doctors in the New York City area. And I believe that we're going to see that kind of difficulty rising. Let me read some of your comments real quick. Ann Wiswall says that in Pennsylvania, there are Rottweilers doing a good job of sniffing out people carrying coronavirus, which was on CBS TV now, which is within 6 months, they will be using them to sniff people out. In 6 months, we need to get this this doggy sniffing thing in. We need to have that in short order. How quickly can they train these COVID sniffing dogs? You know, I looked it up, and it turns out that the University of Pennsylvania's veterinary medicine program is training dogs right now that can pinpoint the scent of COVID-19 in people who are asymptomatic.
Oh.
Dogs that can sniff out COVID can detect the smell in the urine, the blood, the breath, and the saliva of people who have COVID. So they're hoping they can train these dogs quickly and then send them out into the world to detect people. We're going to need a lot of these dogs.
Yep, that's for sure.
That's a great story, but we're going to need a lot of dogs to help us with this. I don't know if that's going to be enough. So, folks, I know that you have heard of the latest nightmare, which is the murder hornets.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that there was probably nothing that was more shocking than the pandemic, except for these murder hornets appearing in 2020.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, they are truly, truly terrifying. Not only do they eat honeybees and take and crush they use these huge mandibles to crush the bodies of the bees into like a meatball and carry it to feed their larvae. They can take down larger prey, like, for example, a rat. Take a look at this video of this murder hornet fighting with this rat. And the rat is this mouse or rat is not winning the battle. It's just going right there just continuously biting it in the neck, all around the neck. Do you see how it just chomps down over and over and over? Then I think the rat just kind of plays dead for a bit, and then it's biting him in the butt, and just keeps on going incessantly up the spine, over and over and over with those big, huge mandibles. It is truly terrifying. This thing is straight out of hell. I've never seen anything so horrifying. Honestly, that's really, really dark.
Yes.
And also, I wanted to just, before I dive into Mexico, before I bring you what's going on in Mexico, I want to bring you another story from Iowa. And I'm going to keep bringing you stories from Iowa because I am from Iowa. Well, not originally. I was born in Houston. I was born in Texas, but I was really raised in Iowa. So I care a lot about the people there. I care a lot about the businesses there. A lot of my friends still live there. My family is still there. And this story out of Iowa from one of the doctors there about the cases, especially in Black Hawk County, is really chilling. Take a listen.
Doctor, what was the impact of your statement locally? It was televised locally. It was also televised nationally last week. And do you have a sense of what you were trying to communicate to people in Iowa got through to people in Iowa?
So you hear a lot when you care for patients, and you really feel for everybody right now because there's so much uncertainty. And so as I'm working with one patient who has a family member who is struggling with the COVID infection and they're in the hospital, then I move on to my next patient who is currently laid off and doesn't understand why this has to happen. So it's either feast or famine for a lot of people. What we noticed is because you always doubt yourself, gosh, is this really helping? Is it making a difference? Is social distancing? And then when all of a sudden we started to see our positives, and we realized it was positive the person works at Tyson's, positive the person works at Tyson's, then you're like, we have a problem, 2,700 people. And our urgent care exploded just within the next, week to 2 weeks. It just exploded with the number of sick people. What was even more profound is when you got those positive test results back, then you started to make the phone calls. So tell me who all lives in your home. Where does this person work? And so you realize it is an underserved population like we're used to treating. And then there's several people that live in the home, 8 to 15 people. So Joe goes to work at Tyson's. He comes home. He's married. He's married to somebody that works in a long-term care facility at our another manufacturing plant. And then that's when the weight of what is going on that you realize, oh my, here it goes. Here goes the spread. And that's exactly what happened. And so our plea is that social distancing is working. And just that one manufacturing plant, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is just one plant. We had people lined up outside. We were trying to do the social distancing, get them in rooms as quick as we can, making them wait in their cars so they stayed away from other people. We didn't want them to go to the pharmacy. We would run medicines out to their cars so they didn't have to walk through our building. But it was explosive and overwhelming. And then again, the phone calls. And I think then to me, the follow-up is here Joe, and I'm using Joe as just a generic name. He goes home, he's trying to provide for his family, he's trying to make a living. And then what happens is he gives it to his parents who he's been taking care of. And now his elderly parents are in the hospital and they're struggling and not going to make it. And I think that's just the whole where you just feel that pressure and you feel for patients going through that.
It's very, very, very sad because I recently interviewed Oscar Zurita. He's one of our neighbors, a local DJ, very well known. Him, his whole family. Happy Cinco de Mayo, Oscar, if you're out there listening to me. I've tried to check his feed every day. He is fighting and he is continuing to do well on his oxygen, which I'm very happy about. His sister was still in the hospital the last time I checked. Their entire family is sick. And when you see entire communities, entire families getting sick like that, it is truly frightening. But I wanted to, compare and contrast what's happening in the United States with our neighbors next door in Mexico. President Donald Trump tweeted this just yesterday. Mexico is sadly experiencing very big coronavirus problems. And now California, get this, doesn't want people coming over the southern border. A classic. They are so lucky that I am their president. Yes, we are, Mr. President. Border is very tight and the wall is rapidly being built. Hey, I can't argue with that.
Exactly.
Because I've been reporting on how these smuggling operations masquerading as amnesty, masquerading as asylum seeking, are really just people taking advantage of a $1 billion industry to smuggle and traffic people into the U.S. through this loophole. And of course, all of that is recently dried up. When this pandemic hit our continent, when it got here, Mexico was like, migrant shelters, what? Bye. Just started deporting people immediately. Mexico knew, I think, whether or not they ever would admit this. The president, of course, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has been pretending that COVID isn't even real, that his magic amulets and four-leaf clovers will protect him from the virus. Mm-hmm. And playing into this stereotype of Mexicans not believing in science and medicine and just using amulets and luck to save their lives, or in this idea that somehow Mexicans are superhuman and much more resistant to virus than other people are throughout the world. Well, the reality is that it's simply not true. As I have said, Mexico has at least 50% of its population living in poverty. A quarter of that is living in extreme poverty. And in a country like that, you have two major problems if you have a pandemic. One of them is that the half of your population that lives in that poverty, they can't quarantine. there's a percentage of your population that won't be able to quarantine for any days, for 0 days, because they don't have money to buy food even for a couple of days, much less a week or a month, and then quarantine in place. They don't have the storage. Many people in their homes don't. They have, to this day, people in Mexico, in the homes of my family members, have these refrigerators that are pretty empty.
Yeah.
It's like they use them for cold cuts and
Cheese.
and not a whole lot more. And it's just that, people go out and get their food fresh every day. They buy it every day. They don't have big pantries to store tons and tons of food. So telling, right from the get-go, telling Mexicans, you have to quarantine for a month or longer is just not going to work out. It's just not going to work out. For those that live in extreme poverty and those that are, under this, in this poverty, they have to go out and earn money every day, because the day they don't go out, that's a day they don't eat. Also, you have the fact that Mexico has been going through a lot of violence and economic hardship. I showed you recently that the cartels in Mexico are passing out food baskets with their logos on them. And the government is largely doing nothing about that. Why? Because they have to slink around with their tail between their legs, knowing they've done precious little for the country. This tweet is circulating in which President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is reading a poem about the lessons of the pandemic.
Really?
And I'm not going to share the video of the poem with you, but I wanted to share the response of many Mexicans to him reading this poem, which is what it says here in this tweet. COVID has taught us, well, basically, what the lessons of COVID are that COVID has laid bare the economic collapse of López Obrador's government. The economic failure that is López Obrador. COVID has shown us that we were never ready. COVID has shown us that there was corruption in the purchase of personal protection equipment and other resources. COVID has uncovered that López-Gatell, the health minister, is a liar. And COVID has made clear that we have the worst president. That he, AMLO, is the worst president. That's a lot to say.
Yeah.
That's a tall order to fill, because most of Mexico's presidents are seen as criminals. You could pick any one, some worse than others. Some not only carry the title of criminal, but also murderer and narco governments. But this guy is being touted as the worst, hands down. You have to screw up pretty bad to get that label. Now, let me tell you why Andrés Manuel López Obrador has earned that label. You know that the United States didn't get a very good start on the testing. There's a lot of reasons why, and not all of them can be blamed on this administration. That's just the honest truth. The WHO lied about a lot of things. And of course, we don't know if they lied because they believed China or because they were in cahoots with China. But we didn't get the right information when we needed it. We didn't get the right testing when we needed it. The testing that was made available through the WHO was not good tests. There's a lot of problems with those tests. Those tests are still very problematic. And yet, there are states in the United States still purchasing equipment from China. which is a testament to how ingrained our need is for things from China, including medicine, including PPE, ventilators, all that stuff. This pandemic has made it very clear to the United States we have to break our dependence on China. And we have to look a lot closer into what the WHO is doing and saying on the world stage with regard to pandemics. Are they really prepared? Are they telling us the whole truth? Are they holding one country and what that country does and what it represents to the world above the other countries? That's problematic if it's true. Meanwhile, Mexico is one of the lowest testing countries in the world. The U.S., remember when I told you that one of the countries that did the best at testing was Singapore? Singapore got out in front of the testing as quickly as possible and has not just flattened the curve. It's going back to some kind of semblance of normalcy because they managed to do that. Meanwhile, the United States has ramped up its testing and is now in tandem. We are neck and neck with Singapore in our ability to treat 10,000 people for every million people. Now, I know that that's not enough, and we have a lot more people in this country than Singapore does, but that's pretty good in comparison to other countries, and especially in comparison to Mexico. In Mexico, testing is 261, not thousands, just 261 per million. For every million people, only 261 of them have been tested. In the U.S., by contrast, as I just told you, for every million people, 10,000 of them have been tested. And we continue to ramp up our testing. And we are continuing to make testing available. In Mexico, it's not available. But neither is anything else. Mexico is testing below Chile, Panama, Peru, El Salvador, the Philippines, Pakistan, Bolivia. All of those countries are doing better at testing than Mexico. And Mexico has said that it has lost a lot of jobs. Of course, the United States has lost millions and millions of jobs. Mexico is saying they've lost 370,000 jobs, which, if you think about it in comparison to their population, is not a lot. That, again, speaks to the volume of people that have to continue working regardless of the pandemic. And as far as what Mexico is offering its people, well, as you know, other countries are taking a part of their gross domestic product and putting it back as a stimulus so that their economies can survive. Germany is giving 20% of its GDP back to its society. The UK is giving 19% of its GDP in stimulus. The United States and Italy are both giving 12% GDP in stimulus. And our president has just announced that we will be getting more stimulus. Meanwhile, in Mexico, zero. Zippo. Zilcho. You know what the president of Mexico is offering? Coupons and tandas. You know what a tanda is?
No.
A tanda is kind of like a pyramid scheme. It's like a personal loan that you and a bunch of friends get together and crowdsource. So you get together and everyone has to pay a certain amount of money for every calendar day. And then at the end of it, one person gets all the money. And then you repeat this every month and a different person gets the money. And the person that gets all the money every month is picked at random. That's a tanda. That is not a government program, folks. That's what the government is offering its people. There's no assistance. There's nothing. If it's not because of NGOs, nonprofits, churches, and things like that, which have up to this point been focusing on migrants, right?
Yep.
in a way that Mexico had never even seen before, there wouldn't be any assistance for Mexican people. And so you see why during the pandemic, they cut off migration and all of this caravans and all that. They cut it off at the knees. They were like, stop that right now. Because we have bigger fish to fry in Mexico. And so, you can say a lot about our country, our president, our response to this virus. But if you just look south, okay? If you just turn your eyes toward poor Mexico, you are going to see something truly astounding and sad. And it's just getting started. Let me tell you the latest figures. This is from just yesterday. 24,905 confirmed cases, 42% female, 58% male. There was a 41% increase in hospitalizations, a 59% increase in ambulance assistance, 2,270 deaths, 13,143 suspected cases, and 61,993 negatives. Do you know what I think of those numbers? You might as well just put them all together in a pot, stir them up, and throw them in the air like confetti because they don't really mean anything. I don't think they mean anything just because of the fact that Mexico and its president and its health minister have essentially been lying. López-Gatell actually told people in a press conference that they didn't need to do tests and that the rest of the world got it wrong. You know how the world keeps talking about getting tests, making tests available? How will they ramp up to get their tests? How will they be safe? Yeah. They have to know the number of people that have the virus and are asymptomatic and all this good stuff. Mexico don't need none of that. He says all those other countries, they are thinking erroneously. They think that by finding all of the cases with tests, they will have all the information they need. We in Mexico, we can have all the information we need about the virus, and we don't need to have all the testing. All we need to do is calculate a number above. So for every case that you see in Mexico, the number is actually 8 times higher. And then he changed that to 10 times higher. And then he changed that to 12 times higher. And I actually suspect it is an unknown number, much, much higher than that in terms of what people are getting. In Mexico, people weren't just fighting from state to state or confiscating different states' tests or PPE. In Mexico, there is no extra PPE. There are stories of people handling dead bodies by pulling down their sleeves over their hands and having only one glove, not even the right kinds of gloves. There are stories of people in the hospital setting getting sick and dying. Doctors, nurses. Guess what's happening in Mexico? People are quitting their jobs. Somebody in the comments asked, I wonder how many people, how many doctors and nurses will quit their jobs after this. I wonder how many nurses and doctors will leave their professions after all this is over. Well, Sherry, I can tell you that in Mexico, it's already rampant. They don't have enough doctors. The doctors saw, wait a minute, you expect me to work where there is no protocol for what we do with someone that shows up with COVID symptoms? You don't have equipment to protect the nursing staff and the doctors. You don't have quarantined areas and ICUs that are specific to COVID. You aren't going to give us any tests so we can check for who has COVID and who doesn't. I quit. This has been happening quietly. What you don't know about what's been happening down south is that the pandemic is a slow rolling horror film. And it's a silent one because the news isn't getting out.
That's right.
The government wants to control everything. They want to control all of the government hospitals, and they want all of the COVID cases to go there. Clinics, private hospitals, none of them are taking COVID patients. If you have COVID, you can only go one place, and that's a government hospital. And there's a reason for that. They don't want anyone to know what's really happening. They want to control how many people are reported having COVID, how many people are reported as dying, and what happens to the bodies and the families.
Wow. And that's why we don't hear anything about it. When you're listening to KPPP LP 88.1 Fargo Moorhead, adding local color to your airwaves.
I want to bring you some of the exclusive evidence reporting that I have for you today, which comes from a partner and friend down in Mexico working with Border Network News and America's Voice News, none other than Oscar El Blue Ramirez. You can find Oscar El Blue Ramirez on his page. You can go to Border Network News, follow him there, or America's Voice Network. Oscar is an independent reporter working out of Tijuana and now also reporting in the United States and all along the border, like in cities in Juarez, for example, and bringing us exclusive footage about what is happening in Mexico. This guy is truly fearless. I have to say, my hat's off to Oscar El Blue Ramirez and the work he is doing, because if you thought that he was a courageous person going up to the border wall, up to the places where smugglers were operating, going and embedding himself in places in the shelters where the caravans were coming through, interviewing all of these folks, some of which had been kidnapped, some of whom had been put into very precarious situations, uncovering false marriages, fraud of the United States government, all this stuff. Now, Oscar is going and planting himself outside clinics and hospitals. These are government clinics and hospitals, and filming and reporting what is happening there. I recommend that you go and check out the Border Network News videos of his reports outside of the EAMS in Tijuana. I don't have time to show you all of his live feeds here, but I highly recommend that you watch them so that you can hear for yourself, blow by blow, in Spanish and in English, what is going on at one of the hardest hitting places in Mexico, the border with California, Tijuana, Mexico, Baja California. Check out this image. These are all images of Oscar El Blue Ramirez and Border Network News, America's Voice Network, that show the entryway to an Instituto Mexicano de Seguro Social, this clinic being one of the clinics that he has reported from. As you can see, there's an ambulance that has transported a person, presumably with COVID, to this hospital. There next to the ambulance, you see a tent. There are checkpoints, which many times Oscar will refer to as filters, because they're called a filtration system, which is a checkpoint because they filter out certain people. Yeah. You don't belong here. You're supposed to go over there, whatever. And right now, what they're filtering for is COVID, right?
Yeah.
As you've seen in some of his reports, if you're an avid BNN, AVN follower, then you've seen his reports outside of these hospitals. And I wanted to share this one with you that shows him outside of the entrance of the Juarez Hospital, one of the clinics there, hospitals receiving COVID patients. Take a look.
Good evening, guys. We're live right here at clinic number 67 in Ciudad Juarez. This apparently is the clinic that has been more affected with COVID, apparently. We see a potential, that woman all the way to the back with a blue mask on her mouth. She's presenting signs of COVID. I just did a live video for everybody that is watching, but in the live feed. But this is the most amazing thing. They don't have a filter like they have in Tijuana, like the one that I show you. They have only people that come all the way to the front door, and they attend you, and then they canalize you through the other door. I don't know if they have another filter over there. And they had this banner outside that says low symptoms and high symptoms. And It says all the way to the bottom, if there's an emergency, you can come only on Mondays to Fridays. Wow. So this is another banner. We see those people, how they're protected, no gloves, but they're wearing, masks. There's another one right here that it says this, exactly the same symptoms. And there's another banner right here that says, please do a one line for all the consults. If you don't do one line, they will be mixed up together. Saying beware patients without, a morning appointment.
So let me just explain something for viewers and listeners that don't understand anything about the Mexican healthcare system. A lot of people from the United States actually go to Mexico for their healthcare. So you might be wondering to yourself if their healthcare is cheaper and, compatible in terms of its efficacy and the quality of care. Why is Mexico failing so horribly at taking care of coronavirus? Well, it's a matter of having capacity. See, in Mexico, they have a socialized healthcare system similar to Canada's. I say similar because it's not as well funded and it's certainly not as efficient. But it's similar in that there are IMSS hospitals, these government-funded hospitals called Instituto Mexicano de Seguro Social, the Mexican Institute of Social Security. That's what they're all called, IMSS for short. If you get an appointment, if you are one of the card holders, you have to get a little card that says that you're one of the people that has a right to go and get services. If you're a card holder, then you get an appointment to be seen or treated. Say you have a need for a cataract surgery. Well, you get put on the list and you might have to wait a few months or longer. It's kind of like, going to Veterans Affairs for services or, it's kind of a mess. It's kind of a mess in that sense. But it's okay because, and that's a service that's free. Sure, you got to pay for your prescriptions. You get a discount if you're a senior. You get a discount if you're an IMSS card holder. But Mexican medicine is pretty inexpensive. Yeah. Pretty inexpensive when you compare it to American medicine. And guess what? Private clinics, private hospitals, and walk-in clinics are on literally every corner. And what does it cost to go into a walk-in clinic?
$10.
Is it $10?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was like $3.
Oh, 10 pesos, yes. So, it's like less than $5.
It's super cheap. So if you have zero insurance, if you have no insurance, and you're in Mexico and you get injured, you can go, walk into a clinic, get treatment right away, even if it's something like a broken bone or whatever, and it's not really going to cost you that much. You can smash your teeth, end up having to go get emergency dental surgery, and have enough money to finish your vacation. I mean, that's how good the private system is in Mexico. But guess what? During a pandemic, I just told you, no clinics or private hospitals are allowed to treat COVID patients. Only the IMSS hospitals are taking them in. All of those clinics, all of those places are closed. And even the IMSS, which is seeing both mixed patients, they're seeing COVID patients and non-COVID patients. This is what the sign that Oscar was reading says. So he says, what happens when you walk up to that gate is they have the filters, right? The filters means the checkpoints. And at the checkpoint, they check to see, do you have any of these symptoms of COVID? If you do, you're going to go to a different area and be treated with all of the COVID people. If you're there for your dialysis treatment or your cancer treatment, your chemo treatment, your monthly exam, your whatever, you're going to go to a different area. But guess what? There's only one line. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that?
Yep.
There's only one line. And he said, I just interviewed a woman over there with symptoms of COVID. What is the sign telling people? There's signs on the gate. You can't go into the clinic. They got you standing outside breathing COVID next to the people that have it. And they got a sign out that says for all of the card holders that are patients here that have respiratory illnesses, I want you to check for the following symptoms. These are the mild symptoms. The mild symptom list says dry cough, high temperature, pain in your throat, pain in your headache, throat pain, abdominal pain, fatigue, diarrhea, and nasal drip. Those are the mild symptoms. The grave symptoms or the extreme symptoms, the serious symptoms are difficulty breathing, a lack of oxygen, persistent pain in the chest, going to the bathroom more than 5 times per day. That is a new symptom I had not seen anywhere. Going to the bathroom more than 5 times a day. That's some extreme diarrhea or something. Confusion. Is that from the lack of oxygen, or do people have? I've heard people get brain swelling and brain damage with COVID. I'm not sure. That's another very strange symptom that I had not seen anywhere. And the presence of blue lips and face. That's a lack of oxygen again. Blue lips and face. That's what it says. In addition to which it says, if you need the emergency room, you can come Monday through Friday. Don't have an emergency on the weekend. Don't get a heart attack.
Exactly.
Don't need to have, don't get into a car accident. Don't get sick. So where does that leave Mexicans who do get sick? Where does it leave millions of people that were used to going in and going to their appointments, doing things because they weren't warned, they weren't told? Here are the things you can see outside of clinics in Mexico. Armed guards, National Guardsmen with semi-automatic weapons guarding the hospital. Here's just one of the pictures taken by Oscar at one of the hospitals that he went to. They've got armed guards. Have you seen that in America yet?
No.
No, you haven't. So when the president says, you guys are lucky you have me as a president, we are. I cannot argue with this truth that is so self-evident. We don't have this going on in our backyard. Let's look at this guard number 2. The previous picture that you just went over, National Guard right there. Here it is. The National Guardsman. No, it's the other one.
That's all I have.
No, we have 2 of them.
I don't have the other one in here, sorry.
Okay. Well, there's another picture of National Guardsmen, and the other one, they actually had the face shields. Now, let me show you one of the banners that is sitting outside the hospital, the clinic. Can you go back a few slides there? Doctors wanted. This is what this sign reads. To answer your question about whether or not doctors are quitting their jobs, the answer is a resounding yes. And this is the evidence of that. Once again, Oscar captured this in Tecate. Tecate. And right outside it says of the hospital, we are hiring doctors and nurses, immediate contracts. Immediate contracts. We will hire you on the spot, put a mask on you, maybe we'll give you a mask, maybe we'll give you gloves, maybe they won't be contaminated because, oh, by the way, they're all from China.
Oh, boy.
All of it from China. I think Mexico just received its 8th plane load of Chinese equipment, etc. All donated, of course, because many of the countries that have received this PPE and these ventilators and these tests have sent them back because they were defective, because they were tainted with coronavirus. And the reason that you're seeing National Guards is because people are erupting. Not only are many of the hospitals and clinics, the ones that were private, not taking patients, they're shut down. They're shut down right now because they can't differentiate. They don't have a way to test. They don't have a way to differentiate between who's COVID positive without symptoms and who's not. So they just shut their doors. That's the other National Guard picture.
Found it. Here it is.
I thought you said you didn't have it.
I didn't think I had.
See how they have visors on? Those guys have visors. But this is common outside of hospitals in Mexico right now. And there's a reason for it. Recently, at one of the hospitals in a suburb of Mexico City named Ecatepec, a family desperate for news, broke into the hospital to demand some answers. Let me just share with you, if you go to BNN and check out their videos, you will see lines of people standing outside these EAMS hospitals, these government-run facilities, without any news from their loved ones. Yep, I dropped off a family member a day ago, 2 days ago. What's going on with that family member? I don't know. What have you heard? They won't tell us anything. And of course, eventually, someone erupted and they got very upset. Now, let me just share with you what they're doing. You're way ahead of me. Let's go to mom. Okay. This is the mom talking to the media after her family members broke into a hospital in Ecatepec demanding answers about her son. Here's that video. I don't want anyone to tell me they're not going to give me his body, she says to the media. I have pictures of him from yesterday. The dad chimes in. He was well. He was fine. He was fine even up until last night. We brought him to the hospital at noon yesterday. I went in to find my son in a room full of dead people, all in bags with zippers on them. Body bags. I unzipped the body bag that my son was in to find out whether or not that was really my son in the bag. His body was still warm. I only demand that my son's body be returned to me intact, whole. I don't want to hear none of this. We're giving you back his ashes BS. I want my son's body. Para la gente que estamos aquí, que nuestros fallecidos que nos entreguen nuestros cuerpos completos porque sabemos que no existe el COVID. We want, for all of the people that are here waiting to get their decedent back to them, we want the bodies of our dead because we know that COVID is not real. My son, I believe my son was injected with some substance to murder him. Wow. And what I didn't show you, and I don't have time to show you, is the videos in which her and or her family members were following doctors. They got into altercations and fights with the doctors, police, all sorts of people, guards within the hospital. They were punching people in the face and saying, how did you kill my son? What did you give my son? And, because, they brought a child in. They brought their son in the day before at noon. He was fine. They were still communicating with him that evening. The next day, he's dead. Wow. And so many people got very upset. Now, what I am about to show you is a clip from the time they went into the hospital, broke into the hospital, and found the body of their son. This is very graphic video of them going into a room full of bodies and looking at the body of their dead son. So please, if you have young people in the room or people that don't, if your heart or emotions can't take this kind of thing, leave the room now. Please look away. Here is that footage. They're walking in. See all the bodies, the gurneys? They're killing them here in this clinic. They're killing them. This isn't fair. He's here. He's here. Look at all the other bodies they got in here. Share it. Share it. They're killing them. Hey. Calm down. Calm down. Wow. So, as you can see, and it's very sad because we all know that the coronavirus is real, but people have been jacked around, lied to, information hidden from them for so long, for so much of this administration, that it is very difficult not to empathize with these families who have just been lied to constantly. And it actually takes independent journalists going out, picking apart what's really going on, finding information, and getting it to the public so that people can find out what's really happening. For example, there is a stadium in Tijuana where apparently they are setting up some sort of field hospital. Remember, Mexico doesn't have the infrastructure. The government doesn't want people to go to the private clinics and hospitals, and they want to control everything. So it's very interesting that all of a sudden there's this field hospital and it's set up at a stadium for a team, a sports team called the Zonkies. This is what it... Oh, wait, are you going to show the hospital in TJ?
Oh, that's what was next.
That's what's next. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me jump backwards then. This next video is in the TJ, the back lot of the Tijuana IMSS. So if you've watched any of BNN's videos where they're interviewing people at the government hospital in Tijuana, this is being built in the lot behind the hospital. Check it out. It's massive.
Good evening, you guys. This is we got in. This is the mobile hospital that is being built for people from COVID. As you can see, it's
Look
a
at how
long
far
hallway
that
right
is.
here.
Yeah.
And it's just row after row.
And
we got porta potties outside. Would they have
we're gonna
bathrooms
walk right
inside
here
of those things?
to show you guys
I
how
assume.
it is being built. You see a lot of rooms right here. It's under construction.
Look at how many buildings.
Wow.
As you see, I'm trying to do this as fast as I can. This is on the back of the parking lot of the hospital. Señores, esto es el hospital que está móvil, construido en la parte de atrás. Es el hospital móvil que está construido en la parte de atrás. Vamos a ver si podemos grabar aquí adentro un poquito más para que vean lo que están haciendo. Buenas tardes, buenas tardes. This is the mobile hospital on the back of the parking lot. Este es el hospital móvil que están construyendo en la parte de atrás de la Clínica 1, señores.
When you look down these rows and just go on and on and on.
En
Right
el
behind the
estacionamiento de
hospital.
atrás. Como ver acá hay otro filtro allá, de aquel lado.
You can see they have a checkpoint in there, inside of that.
Así se ve, señores, el hospital móvil de la Clínica 1 en el estacionamiento en la parte de atrás. This is the way that it looks, people. The mobile hospital behind the Clinic 1.
So this is a mobile hospital being built behind the government hospital where people are being channeled into, it appears that people are going to be channeled back there. What's happened at the regular hospitals is that people weren't given, the government gave the hospitals no equipment, no tests, no adequate warning even of when the first cases started to show up in Mexico. So they were flying blind. In one of the cases that I was researching, a person that has had kidney failure since they were a child and goes in regularly for dialysis and stent changing and all of that, went to their regular scheduled appointment to an EAMS in Mexico City, or in a suburb of Mexico City. And they went in because of the COVID threat. The dad wasn't allowed into the treatment room, but was allowed to stay in the lobby inside the building. After a while, he was transferred in the following days to the second floor. And the dad had been hearing that the second floor was a place where there was a lot of people that presented symptoms of COVID. So he became very scared. But when he went and confronted the staff, they told him his son had no COVID symptoms and there was no reason for him to fear that they were diagnosing him with COVID or that he had caught COVID. When in fact what had happened was that they didn't have the gear, they didn't have the tests. They accidentally put a COVID patient on a floor with non-COVID patients, and 30-some staff people plus the whole floor of non-COVID patients all got COVID. Wow. They had a massive outbreak, which they hid for 2 weeks, and they returned this man's body, the son of his body, to him with inside of a body bag that said probable COVID. Not his death certificate, not any of his medical records indicated anywhere that he had tested positive or had been treated as a COVID patient while he was in the hospital. So it's these kinds of stories, these kinds of testimonies that are going on all over the country that show you Mexico is not being transparent. Julie comments, but yet the Mexican citizens have no food, no money, scraping by, and there's money to build a field hospital. This whole pandemic is playing games with us all around the world, and certain politicians are sitting back and collecting the hush money. Julie, I have something for you. Pay attention to this. I just showed you. Let's put our thinking cap on, okay? There's a cluster in the government hospitals where they're getting patients mixed up, putting them on the wrong floors, contaminating entire hospitals, killing doctors and nurses because they don't have their act together. At hospitals where this is happening, they are building field hospitals in the back for God knows what. The footage, the photos you're seeing on my program, not even in Mexico, in the mainstream media, do they have this footage available. This is exclusive footage released to us from BNN, from Oscar El Blue. But they don't even have this in the media in Mexico. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, they're not even telling the people in Mexico what's going on. You know more about what's going on over there than the people of Mexico know. And then, while they're still building this field hospital behind the EAMS, the Zonki's stadium is being converted into a different kind of field hospital. Look at the layout in here. It's quite different. This looks like the one that they did in that New York stadium, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of that one. The setup is a little bit different, but see how they have the little plastic containment pods or whatever they are around these little, whatever they are, these little pods.
Yep.
And the next one here shows you more of a side view, so you can kind of see the the cots inside of each one of these. How secure are these? How well can they keep people from
pretty flimsy,
spreading it all throughout the stadium?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Who knows? But I have a question. Why is this Zonky Stadium set up there when they got the field hospital over at the other place? And my other question is, why are Doctors Without Borders hanging out at the Zonky's Stadium Field Hospital? Are they running the show because the Mexican doctors and the Mexican government should be at the helm? If you blow up that picture, you can see that Doctors Without Borders were indeed in the parking lot. Look at the logo. Look at the logo there, and you'll see there's a number of vehicles with that same logo. The one on next to this man, it says Médicos Sin Fronteras, Doctors Without Borders. What in God's green earth is going on? By the way, right after Oscar started taking pictures of the Doctors Without Borders outside of the stadium, a flood of people descended upon Oscar, making threats and kicking him out. Wah, wah, wah. But it's too late. Your secret is out.
Yep.
We know something is not right. We know something is not right. And there are still honest journalists that are out there doing real investigative work that are going to get to the bottom of it. You better believe it. And God bless BNN and God bless Oscar for his courage and his determination to get the story. To get the story no matter what it takes. I really take my hats off to him, to Anthony, for all of the great work that they're doing. And I just ask for you to think of how different, how lucky, how truly blessed we are here in the United States. I know that there isn't a lot of good news out there, and that a lot of the stuff that we're hearing about, especially with regard to how much more testing we got to do and all of this, it can be overwhelming and make us sad. But on this Cinco de Mayo, I want you to thank your lucky stars that you are not on the other side of that border, because things could be a whole hell of a lot worse. I mean, nightmare style worse. So thank you for being with us here tonight. I do have one more uplifting video about a cleaning service that's taking off throughout Baja California, especially in Tijuana, called COVID Busters. Who you gonna call? COVID Busters. Their group of friends got together, decided to sanitize their city. We're just trying to do our part to help the community. We want to disinfect common areas and vehicles, especially public transportation, taxis. They also do cop cars, I've seen. COVID Busters. Stay at home, it says. I'm glad that they still have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
You know, they do this every other day. Actually, I've seen them out there almost every day. They've got stations set up along the side of the road, and people just pull over, jump out of their car, and they will disinfect your entire vehicle. Cops rolled through there several times a day. Taxis, minibuses, vans. Look at that. You can, this is the place in the whole country of Mexico that has the most cases. So you can call on the COVID Busters in Tijuana and get them to come out and take care of sanitizing your common areas. So, who you gonna call if you're in Tijuana? COVID Busters. And they're gonna hang out for as long as it takes to get through this pandemic. You know who to call in Tijuana. That piece from Uni Radio. They're very clever.
Yep.
I love the Mexican ingenuity. I have a lot of hope for the Mexican people. I have a lot of faith in their intelligence. I know that despite the fact that their president did not lead by example and did practically nothing to protect them from this virus, the Mexican people were paying attention to, guess who? Their neighbors to the north. Mm-hmm. They were watching our news, paying attention to our coverage and the leadership of our president, and that's why they sheltered in place and saved many millions of lives. Thanks for being with us here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Good night, happy Cinco de Mayo, and God bless.